Modern sports and really any entertainment is a generally PR friendly, sterile environment. Everyone who participates outside of the occasional streaker is vetted, cleared, and processed before participation. Given the nature of social media, we know just about everything about everyone who is even tangentially famous, and it would be hard to hide anything from anybody. We would be forgiven for assuming that that environment has always existed, but what if it didn't? What if there was the perfect marriage of time period and an anything goes attitude that let, well, anything and anyone go? This is what you don't know about the mysterious appearance of L.W. Wright and disappearance of Mario Rossi. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Matt, and this is Blake.
Howdy, y'all.
Perfect for this episode.
I know.
Today, because it is peak spooky season when we're releasing this episode, we have two spooky season mysteries from the world of NASCAR, and it's really kind of cool that it is NASCAR. It kind of fits perfectly. If you know anything about NASCAR, it's got its roots in moonshining and bootlegging during the Prohibition era, where you had to sneak alcohol around. So the formative years of the sport, like both when it became an idea, we're going to soup up these cars to go beat all the people chasing us, trying to steal our liquor, I guess. And when it became an actual sport, were all rough and tumble times that are going to be perfect for the two stories that we've got for you today. Before we start, Blake, what is your opinion of NASCAR in general?
I was basically raised by a family of NASCAR people. So my dad's side of the family has really thick roots in NASCAR, to the effect of pulling the pace cars to every race for many years. So, I rode in the cars on the streets. I was much more into it when I was younger. I don't watch as much of it now as I used to, but there's definitely a place and time for it. It's just not something that I watch regularly anymore, but it's changed a lot, right? The sport itself has changed immensely since the last time I watched it. It's not that I don't like it, so I'm not a NASCAR hater by any means.
Yeah, and a lot of people are, and it gets that like kind of bad rap because it's just a bunch of rednecks turning in circles, right?
Supposedly.
Supposedly, but over time, it really has become, soccer is the biggest sport in the world. But the second biggest, it's not NASCAR by itself, but auto racing is the second most watched sport in the world. Like, most of those views are for Formula One. But in NASCAR, a lot of like high-tech engineering things that I don't even begin to think I understand go into what's going on. So it is kind of a high-tech situation, and that's changed just in our lifetime from actually being a couple of guys in their backyard to being legit engineers that could work for any company anywhere doing anything. But our stories are based in that time where things were more anything goes. Our first story, as we said, was an appearance. Not very often you get a mysterious appearance of someone, but here we do, of a man named L.W. Wright. Now, in your head, you should see us saying L.W. Wright in air quotes, because that almost assuredly is not his real name in any form, shape, form, or fashion. Not his real name.
How do you know that?
Well, we'll get there. He is going to appear randomly in Nashville, Tennessee in 1982 because he wanted to enter the Winston 500, which would have been run in Talladega. Ricky Bobby, go get him.
That was the big one.
Not first, you're last. All that stuff. He named his team Music City Racing because he is from Nashville. And a man named William Dunaway. Now, there's no reason to question this man's name, but maybe you should, because nobody had heard of him before this time either. He is going to arrange for local press in Nashville to go to Nashville Speedway, which at the time was a kind of a top-tier NASCAR venue, and it also had weekly racing as well. They were all going to show up there and interview Wright. He claimed at this interview that he was going to enter the race at Talladega with sponsorship from country star T.G. Shepherd. Blake, quickly give us your top 5 T.G. Shepherd songs. Exactly.
I got nothing.
Yeah. I looked him up. He had 10 number one hits in a row in the 80s.
Oh, well, that's why.
80s country, something else.
Yeah, I wasn't there yet.
I'm still not there. Can't even go backwards and find out. He also claimed he had sponsorship from Merle Haggard, which people may be familiar with. It's one of the outlaw country type guys. Not really familiar with the music. Am familiar with the name, Merle Haggard.
Heard the name, yeah. Not familiar with the music, but yeah, I've definitely heard the name.
The biggest thing that comes out of this thing is that he claimed to have 43 Grand National Series starts. The Grand National Series is what we now know as the Cup Series. It is the top level of NASCAR competition. And at this meeting, he claimed to have 43 Grand National starts.
That's just a claim. Like, is there any way to substantiate that?
So in the real world, in 2020, where we live, a reporter would very quickly know that that was probably false. Number one, the press for every sport is much more, trying to think of the right word. They're just much more around, I guess. They're more present for their sports. Yeah. There are fewer of them. In this case, it was a bunch of reporters that would not have necessarily been on like a NASCAR beat. And, if you watch sports now or listen to sports radio now, people who aren't into NASCAR get NASCAR terminology wrong all the time. Sure. They don't really know who anybody is. So this part of the story actually could still happen where somebody claims they did something and you can't. But it is 2020 now, and you could look up, just like any other sport, you go to racingreference.com and you say, no, you don't have 43, you got 0. Your name's not here.
Right. The internet's a beautiful thing.
Isn't it? But in 1982, you would have had to have gone to probably the library or to your own newspaper, got some microfiche, searched for old results. Maybe somebody had the media guide laying around that you could dig into and do research. But otherwise, just kind of like the Wild Wild West in that situation. When the story is published in Nashville that he has sponsorship from these 2 country stars, and that he's going to go drive in the Winston 500 at Talladega, immediately T.G. Shepherd's lawyer calls a second press conference or grabs a hold of a single reporter to let him know that he has no idea who Wright is. And T.G. Shepherd's lawyer also happened to own the Nashville Speedway, where all this stuff was kind of centered. And so that should give weight to people that something's going on. The man that owns the racetrack in town has no idea who this guy is. The guy that's his supposed sponsor has no idea who this guy is. But things kept trucking. He goes to listen to how 1980s this is. He goes to a marketing firm in Nashville ran by Bernie Terrell that is called Space Age Marketing.
Fancy. That is some back in the day what they thought the Jetsons were kind of thing.
Right. We're going to space in 1982 in Nashville. He picked the right person. Terrell did not know racing at all. He just assumed that this guy's coming in. He's going to go run a race. He's talking about racing. He must know what racing is. He's a pretty good character. I'm going to help this guy do things. And so he starts funding some of this enterprise. He gives him the money in part to buy a car from a man named Sterling Marlin. Some of you who are NASCAR, adjacent may know that name. Better name, his father is Cuckoo Marlin.
I did not know. Sterling Marlin was in the day that I followed racing pretty heavily. I did not know that was his dad's name. That's pretty awesome.
His dad is Cuckoo Marlin, one of the best, kind of just short track local guys in history, especially there in Nashville. Sterling is the son, and he has built a Chevrolet capable of going and running in this race. And so Wright shows up and gives him $17,000 straight cash. Why? It's 1982. I guess people just have cash. You had it under the
$17,000 in the 80s. What? I don't even know what that would be today. That's decent money. Who's walking around with that cash?
It's somewhere between 1.5 and 2 times is what you would get today. So it's like $34,000, $35,000, $40,000.
Who has that cash?
Just in cash.
That's okay. All right. I'll save my comment, but continue.
So
I have a suspicion.
Grand.
I have a suspicion already, but I'm going to let you keep going.
Well, there are only certain kinds of people that walk around without much money, right? $17,000 cash. He does spend $3,700 in a check to Marlin to finish paying off the car. He also is going to spend other money to get to NASCAR. I believe it's like $150 for a license. It's a couple $100 per person. He does bring himself. He brings Sterling Marlin along with him. I think Marlin basically said, "You're taking my car, and I don't know who you are, so I'm going to go." He takes William Dunaway with him, and he takes 2 other people that he's going to use as part of his pit crew. He has to pay pit passes for them. He's got to buy tires. He's got to buy certain parts. He's got to do things to get into the race. Sterling Marlin, to his credit, I said he went with him because things were suspicious. And it's true. Like, Sterling Marlin goes with him and knows something is amiss. The first thing that happens is once they get to Talladega, people start interviewing him. This is when he gets in front of the traveling posse. NASCAR at that time would have been roughly the same people going town to town to town, rolling in on a Wednesday or a Thursday, stay until Sunday, the race is over, then they leave. This is when he starts encountering that kind of media. So he's saying he's got 43 Grand National starts, and everybody's looking at him and saying, "We've never seen you before in our lives."
So he gets called out at this point because he's in front of people who actually know what they're talking about.
Right. The people that know what's going on. And he changed his story.
Oh, nice.
He says, "Nope, you're right. I have not driven in 43 Grand National races. What I have done is driven 43 times at tracks that host Grand National races." And he says this was in an article that he raced in the Sportsman Series. And I knew that was a thing, but I looked it up, and the Sportsman Series does not coincide with the time period of this story. So the best I can figure is he was claiming to have driven in something that would have been, like, I guess, referred to as a sportsman race, but didn't actually have a designation. So he's just doing, like, local stuff.
Sure.
He's just claiming to have done it at those tracks. It's totally the same thing, right?
I'm like racking my brain already, but go ahead.
Sterling Marlin, to his credit, gives an interview after this thing is over and says he kind of figured out what was going on because Wright kept asking him questions that everybody should know.
Sure.
Now, he doesn't specify what kind of questions these are, but you have to assume it's somewhere slightly above, like, what does this pedal do? How do I put this in gear? Like, it's got to be above that, because otherwise he'd be like, "No, we're done.
Sure.
No, get out."
Yeah, I can imagine some of those.
But it would have to be below, like, what would you be asking that, like, you can't figure out? Like how fast am I supposed to go? Like, what's going on? Do I, do we have to stay in line? What's the deal? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like what do the different flag colors mean? Like stuff like that would be like, what, yellow flag? I've never seen it. What is a yellow? And then a red flag comes out. He doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. The number one question that our listeners out there may be wondering is, how did this dude get a license to race? It is a requirement that NASCAR approves you to get in a car. You just don't show up and pay. But that's not true. That's a lie. That is what we do now in 2020. If you wanted to go drive in any NASCAR series race, they're going to make sure you know what you're doing. They're going to figure out if you've driven anywhere else before, how well you did, if it was a good field, if you wrecked everybody, does anybody know who you are? But this is a perfect time because NASCAR wants to do that. But in Alabama, they have specific right to work laws that prohibited NASCAR from doing anything other than accepting his money for the license, checking his car to make sure it fit their specifications, and then that's it. That guy gets to do whatever he wants, and they can't say anything about it.
So it sounds like this was premeditated, that he specifically drove at Talladega in the state of Alabama because he knew the rules. Like, it seems kind of schemed that way, right?
It definitely feels that way. Absolutely. It even in 1982, Talladega would have been a place that people would have assumed they could drive with their eyes closed, real big track. You don't need to hit the brakes.
Right.
You just kind of drive.
Yeah, it's just acceleration 100% all the time.
So that definitely played a role in it. It was a prestigious race, and so that played a role in it. But yeah, like that seems like it adds to the story, right? That he wants to go there.
Yeah. It only makes sense that he wants to race at the place. I mean, and maybe other states had the same rules in the 80s. I don't know, but it has to coincide there. For him to just show up and start doing this stuff with all this money, like, he had a plan. He had to have a plan.
Absolutely. I mean, he did have a plan. Again, just the way he talked, like a NASCAR official after it was over gave an interview where he said, look, like, normally we try to vet people. We didn't have a choice, but he also came in here and he said the right names and he said the right places, and he literally talked his way into the race. He was also interviewed by the press to find out what was going on with this whole sponsorship situation. Like, T.G. Shepherd says he doesn't know who you are. Like, where is this coming from? And in the interview, he says, well, the T.G. Shepherd sponsorship is just a little premature. It was premature. We didn't mean to say it. He backed out, but we're still working on it. We've got some more people ready to go, ready to sign up. Like the perfect con man situation, right? Like, we didn't lie. We just
he only backpedaled when he got caught. Yeah,
absolutely. But from that point forward, things got a little bit better. On qualifying day, he hit average speed of 187.379 miles per hour. Keep in mind that's average speed. It's not the same. It doesn't mean he actually just went that fast the entire time, which was good for 36th in a 40-car field. So there were 3 cars slower than him, but he also crashed his car on the second lap of qualifying.
So
1 lap.
Yeah, one lap he gained 36th place, but then on the second lap he crashed.
Tinned it. Yeah, absolutely. Bend the car on the second lap. They were able to fix it, so everything's okay. This is the same day that Benny Parsons would become the first driver to achieve a lap with an average speed over 200 miles per hour. It's the first 200 mile per hour lap in history. Now, if you know anything about racing now, L.W. Wright almost wouldn't make the field in a normal situation.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there are, especially in F1, I know this is NASCAR, not F1, but in F1 they've got a 107% rule. Essentially, whatever the fastest car is, take his lap time, add 7% to it. You've got to be there, or you are too slow and endangering the field.
Right, they won't even let you on. I'm imagining. So Parsons goes over 200 miles an hour, but say he hits just 200.001. And then this guy's running 187, you said? 187?
Yep.
Imagine being on an interstate, right? Running the speed limit of 70 miles an hour, and when a car passes you going 13 miles an hour faster than you. Just imagine how much faster that car is going. Yes. But then you're already going over 180 when that happens. That's unreal.
Yeah. It's plenty slow. And that would end up becoming part of the issue that L.W. Wright was going to have for the rest of the weekend. He is able to fix the car before the race starts, so he is able to take the green flag. Good for L.W. Wright. He lasts 13 laps in the race, a whole 13.
And this is a 500-mile race, right?
500-mile race, I believe. It's like now I'm going to show how much of a nerd I am. It's like a 2.66 mile track. And so I think it's like either 186 or 188.
It's 180.
Laps.
It's 180 something. Yeah.
Yeah. So he lasts 5. Well, I'm sorry. He lasts 5 green flag laps. Another dude crashes. That's not him. So like points for him. Way to go.
He wasn't the first one to go out.
That's right. They ran 3 laps under caution, and then he ran another 5 laps before he had to retire the car. Go ahead and guess why.
Did he crash?
Nope. He's too slow.
Oh, they kicked him off the track.
Slow. Yeah, depending on the source, he either had an expired engine, so that would be why he had to retire, or the car was too slow, maybe because the engine was given out. Either way, NASCAR black flagged him, pulled him out of the race, and so he parked the car. Now, this is where the good part is.
Oh, goody!
It's not conning him into the track. It's not like getting a PR guy on your side without knowing who you are, telling people that you got a country star as your sponsor. He parks the car. He hangs out for a little bit, maybe watches most of the end of the race, and then he gets into the flatbed trailer, the truck that brought the car to the track, and he leaves. Just disappears. He's gone.
So did anyone see him leave, or did they just show up and was like, all right, let's pack the car up, and then the truck's not there?
Yep, just gone. They're like doing their thing. They're finishing the race. They're doing whatever. The tracks have like tunnels to go in and out, so you can get out in the middle. But yeah, they get ready. They're all getting ready to leave and load the car up, and there is no truck. It is gone. Flatbed truck, goodbye.
Was the car still there? Did he take the car?
He left the car.
Well, it wasn't worth anything. It probably wasn't worth that much at that point because he blew it up. But
yeah, he's blown the engine. He's wrecked the car, so it's definitely not worth the $20,000 that it was up front.
Okay,
without at least a little bit of work. Can you guess what happened to all the checks that he wrote?
I would assume that they bounced, but that's just a guess.
They bounced like flubber.
So he had the cash. He had the cash. Of course, that's good. Unless it was counterfeit currency. That's a different issue.
Sure.
But if it was true cash, that's good. But he's also writing checks that there was nothing there for.
Checks to Sterling Marlin for the car, checks to NASCAR for some of the supplies, Goodyear tires for the tires, or I don't even know if they were Goodyear tires, whoever made the tires.
It was probably good. It's NASCAR. They were Goodyears.
Get some of them Eagles. And so, yeah, he leaves. Naturally, people start looking for him. Sterling Marlin, again, because he's just a good old country boy from Nashville. All of you need to go listen to Sterling Marlin talk. Just pull up YouTube and type Sterling Marlin. It is the best, strangest voice you will ever hear. But to his credit, he just says, like, look, I knew something was fishy. They told me the check bounced. It really didn't surprise me. I was kind of expecting it the whole time. He's just over the whole situation. He's like, dude's gone. NASCAR contacts law enforcement to get a warrant out for the bad checks, because obviously you want to do that. But nobody has found him. They tracked him down to where he was living in the Nashville area, and they talked to his landlord, and lo and behold, the checks he wrote to his landlord also bounced.
So he was just gone. He was scheming everybody.
Yes. And he has never been heard from since, from anybody.
That is such a weird... And of course, that was a different time. This all happened in a different time. But the whole just like... I mean, I'm just so used to it being regulated, right? Everything's regulated. Everything's like... You're measured to like the millimeters on these cars today. So that they all are so close... that it's up to the driver to win the race and not, at least in NASCAR, it's up to the driver to win the race and not the car itself. So I'm used to like Jimmy Johnson getting fined because his spoiler is like 2 millimeters off where it's supposed to be. Or, you know, like the restrictor plates aren't there within millimeters and like you're fined or you're kicked off the track or like you can't race, whatever the case is. So I guess I'm so used to that I have a really hard time believing that this dude just walked in. And of course we're like halfway between the moonshine running days of NASCAR and the 2020 days of measuring millimeters. Somewhere in the middle, this guy just showed up and got away with it, I guess.
And it definitely is a product of the time. My dad's like 74 years old, so I was talking to him about this story, and it just hit me that I looked over at him and I was like, y'all were able to do some really wild stuff back in the day. Because if you think about it, like, it's not even just sports, it's everything.
Everything was that way,
yeah. You want to rent an apartment now, and they're going to want to check your credit score. So they've got everything on you. Like, everything you do is attached to you. It would be hard to do this, but back then, you could just rent an apartment by giving a dude some cash, and you could buy a car by giving some dude some cash, and you could just move to a new town and say you were somebody, and you would be that person, whether you were or not. And like today, you can't even get a job most places without all kinds of identification, you know? So it definitely is a product of the time of just being like weird. The 80s were out there.
That's amazing. So this other guy you mentioned, this also happened in the 80s? This, like, around the same time period?
Go figure.
Right.
Also happens in the wild 80s and the time leading up to it with everything going on. So we've got an appearance. Now we get a shady disappearance. And this is the one that'll chill you a little bit by the time we get to the end of it. This is the story of Mario Rossi. No relation to current IndyCar driver Alexander Rossi, because I'm a nerd and I know these things. This guy was born in 1932. He's the son of Italian immigrants. He's a first-generation American from Trenton, New Jersey. Like many people who are so inclined, he's going to take to cars and working on them at a really early age. And as a product of that, he is going to be one of, not the first, but one of the geniuses of not just NASCAR, but any racing, any car type thing. And some of the stuff with safety is important, you know, kind of just in racing, but to your day-to-day life as well. Like many people of the time period that are chasing a dream, he moves from place to place. So from Trenton, he goes to Chicago. He hooks up with Tom Pistone, which looks like Pistone, but that's not how you say their name. It's really cool.
There's an E on the end?
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know. I may have just made that up. Who knows? That family, by the way, still has a presence in NASCAR. There's a guy that's a reporter and analyst for like the Sirius XM channel that's got that same last name because it's his son. He does eventually move to Daytona, as you would, but he ends up in Spartanburg, North Carolina. He works first for a man named Smokey Unick, who is probably, this would be worth doing if people enjoy the racing stories. One on Smokey Unick, he's probably the most crafty, and by crafty, I mean he figures out ways to cheat in NASCAR history. Or, like, maybe not cheat, but definitely, you know, find places where there aren't rules made to not do something. So you do it.
Interesting.
And then he finally hooks up with Bud Moore. Moore is a famous car owner for years and years and years. He had won championships in 1962 and 1963 with a guy named Joe Weatherly. His second driver was Billy Wade. He'd won the Rookie of the Year in 1963. And Rossi shows up in 1964. Both cars really successful again. Wade won 4 straight races over the summer that year. But unfortunately, both Joe Weatherly and Billy Wade would be killed in crashes within that year before the next season would start in 1965. Particularly, Wade's death played a role in Rossi's, you know, life and mindset going forward because they were friends. And in Rossi's eyes, the death was preventable. In his accident, one of the lap belts, which is, so if you think about, in those days, some of the harnesses actually were just regular seat belts. Some of them were like a 2-point just across the lap. Either way, the lap part of the restraint, whatever he had on, broke, and the belt rode up into his stomach area somehow and squeezed his diaphragm and his intestines. And that's actually what killed him. It wasn't the impact. I mean, I guess it was the impact, but not a head thing, not anything like that. It was just the stress on the intestines led to his death.
Ooh.
And so he spent the rest of that year figuring out a way to fix this situation. And he came up with the 5-point harness that is still used by a lot of people today. So there's one over your shoulder, one over the other shoulder. You got 2 lap belts from either side, and then there's another belt in the floor that comes up between your legs so that everything kind of stays in place.
And when you sit in a 5-point harness, it feels really snuggly, especially in a bucket seat with a 5-point. You're like, you feel like you're about to go on like a amusement park ride, like a roller coaster or something, because of the way like that shoulder thing comes down over your head, and you're in there, and you're not going anywhere.
You're stuck. Yeah. It is one of the most tremendous things that like this we get this innovation that comes about like this, right? But if you think about 50, this is 65, so just under like 45, 50 years later, we were still having like people die because of neck, they're like skull fractures and things, because literally every part of you is attached to the car except your head. So when you hit things like the Dale Earnhardt crash, right? You hit something, your whole body is part of the car, so you're fine.
Except,
but your head was just for free. Yeah.
Jeez.
Which is just crazy that it took that long to be like, we should probably like attach your head to the car too. Like, make sure you're.
Oh yeah, I mean you would think, because it's amazing. I wonder if they just didn't consider that to be as important. Like they just weren't as educated about injuries and stuff at the time. So they're like, I need my arms to clutch the steering wheel, and I need my feet for the pedals, and that's it. Like I don't care what happens to my head until the Dale Earnhardt crash in 2001.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's one of those things you can find on YouTube. A couple of crashes that look like normal, and then they show the in car, and like the car hit the wall on the right side, and the dude's head literally just like bounces back and forth, and you're like, oh my god, how did you survive?
It's like watching a football
hit.
Yeah, like it's sickening to watch that you can even live through something like that. I mean, the human body's pretty cool, but that's intense.
It just incredible. But that was one of his achievements. Put his mind to it, figured out a way to solve it. I think he worked with the Air Force in this situation too, so it helped them out. He was working to figure out all kinds of getting crash data from everybody to figure out how to make things safer. He's eventually going to start his own team. Again, for the NASCAR nerds out there, Bobby Allison was his driver. He eventually hooked up with Bobby's brother Donnie, which in another context would sound weird the way I said that, but Bobby and Donnie both drive for Rossi at different points as Rossi owns his own team. He does find some success. They win races. Things are going well, but he couldn't keep factory support. And then as it is now, if you're not getting a lot of support from your manufacturer, Ford or Plymouth, Chevrolet at the time, there were a couple of others involved. If you're not getting that support, it is financially a struggle to stay afloat, and he never could keep that. But he did innovate again. His pit crew won a pit crew championship specifically because they figured out if you glue the lugs to the wheel, then you will go faster because you don't have to spend time getting it started on the thread before you use the air gun. It's just there. Pop it on, boom, 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 boom. Or at least now it's boom, 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 boom. Back then it was like boom, boom. It's very slow. Very slow. No one knows why.
The technology has advanced.
Yes, much faster now, but innovative again. Perhaps the coolest part of his story is that in the middle of what's called the Aero Wars, where Plymouth and Ford were just pumping money into NASCAR because they figured, and rightfully so, they had the data to back it up. There's the saying, if you win on Sunday, you will sell on Monday. And so they were trying that. They were doing everything they could, pumping money in, researching aerodynamics, figuring out how to make the cars go faster. What can we do to make, the engines better, to get better grip, all this stuff. And this is when, if you've seen like 70s race cars, these are the stock cars that have the giant wings on the back. Eventually, Bill France, who ran NASCAR, got tired of the situation because only Fords and Plymouths were winning, and because the cars just kept getting weirder and weirder. Nobody was driving on the roads with these giant wings. It's not the look he wanted to have for NASCAR. So they,
to be fair, if I saw like the Richard Petty 43 Blue Superbird coming down this road, I would have a heart attack. Like
Sure.
today, I would. Like that would just
If
be
it just
that would
pulled
be
up behind
yeah
you.
that would be quite a sight to see.
It would also be terrifying. You'd be like, "What is this thing?"
I would be scared. I would. My first question is who's in the car, like who's got one of those and who's driving it, and then I would just roll my windows down and turn my radio off and listen because it would just be such a beautiful sound.
Absolutely the best. But Bill France wanted to shut this whole situation down. So he came up with the idea that if at Daytona the next year to start the season, if you used the giant wing, then you had to have a motor that was about 120 cubic inches smaller than the motor available to teams who did not use the giant wing. To no one's surprise, everybody chose the giant motor and not the wing.
That would make sense, right?
Stands to reason. You're trying to go fast. Give me the big motor. Everybody except our boy Mario Rossi. He showed up with a car with the dainty little tiny engine and the giant wing. People who were at the race remarked at how much smaller the engine looked compared to everybody else, and said that he must have gotten it out of a toy car. That's the difference. In fact, he had got it engineered. I don't have the name. It's on me. Sorry for the bad research, folks. But it was a drag racer that he was friends with had specially engineered the engine to be as powerful as possible in the small size. And to everyone's surprise, that car led the Daytona 500 at one point. With everybody else with the giant motors, that wing was going to town until it crashed.
Oh, no.
Car crashed out. Did not win the Daytona 500 because that would be a great story. Eventually, Rossi's going to bow out of NASCAR for a lot of different reasons. He gave plenty of interviews where he said the stress of going and building cars all day, nonstop work. Then you go and then you come back and you don't see your family and all you're doing is working. And it's just a lot of stress.
A lot of travel.
That played a role. He's well known in stories about him to have had a little bit of a uneasy working attitude with people. He didn't get along with everybody really well, so that played a role. When the head honcho wants you to do something and you decide to stick it to him by doing the exact opposite, that also has a negative effect on your career. He did show up a couple more times. He worked with the Allisons again. Supposedly at a Daytona 500, he figured out a way to hide nitrous in the roll cage, and they used that. He came back the next year and worked a little bit with Darrell Waltrip, who is a 3-time champion, former commentator, all that stuff. DW. He worked with him, but the two of them did not get along. I think they were both two really big personalities, and so that did not work out. But he again used some nitrous and got caught this time with Darrell Waltrip, and eventually just kind of retreated to the shadows. And unfortunately for Mario Rossi, that is where things started to go wrong. He spent some time back at home in Trenton, but he spent a lot of time in South Florida in the 1980s.
That was quite a time.
Yeah. If we had some Miami Vice music.
And not have to give them all of our money, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we don't make any money anyway, so I guess we
no.
can't give them nothing.
No.
But Miami Vice, man, he moved into the area that is just rampant with drugs, and he happens to find a man named Gary Ballou and a man named Billy Harvey. Gary Ballou had been driving cars in various divisions around the country for years at this point. Usually they were financed by Billy Harvey, and these two guys had plenty of money. They remind us of L.W. Wright in the way that they had all kinds of money and cash that really didn't make sense for them to have.
I have another suspicion. Wait. Never mind. I'll hold on to it. Never mind.
It's almost right, though, because, again, there are only certain kinds of people that do things like buy. I think some of the stories say that their crew would just show up at a bar and they would buy somebody one person by one person like 40 drinks and just send them to them all at once just so they could sit and watch and see what happened. Some guy wanted to get a sponsor, so he rolled up into the meeting with the sponsors and gave everybody like diamond belt buckles and Rolexes. At which point, why do you need a sponsor? Because you have diamond belt buckles and Rolexes. Just a lot of opulence. Rossi fell in with these people. He was building cars for Ballou. He worked with Billy Harvey. The only problem is the FBI also was falling in with Gary Ballou.
What?
And Billy Harvey. These guys worked together with some other people to bring in what the FBI alleged to be 1 million pounds of cocaine per year from the Caribbean into South Florida.
Yeah, that's called the Cartel, if you weren't aware. This is like Pablo Escobar, Colombia prime time.
Yeah. From 76 to 82, the FBI put the total at 300 million in that time's money. Running that through an inflation calculator gives you the total of $809 million in 6 years. We're talking about almost being a billionaire in today's terms. That much money, that much drug was being brought in 6 years.
Yeah, Miami was like the cocaine capital of the world in the 80s. Like it was another world down there. So
NASCAR finds out about this investigation. They cooperate completely with the investigation that took 2.5 years. So before Rossi got involved with it, people were already investigating. And so he's kind of coming into it as it's reaching ahead. And it does reach ahead. It's Speed Weeks 1982. So this is in Daytona. There's like a couple of series that race there. Lots of things going on. A lot of people paying attention. The FBI raids this cartel and makes somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 arrests. But Rossi was not one of them.
Oh, that's lucky.
Isn't it, though? Like, everybody else gets arrested, but you don't.
And somehow you slip out, yeah.
Now, some of you at home may be assuming that he got off scot-free because he just built cars for these people. He just helped them race, and he went about his day-to-day life. And that's all he did.
That's not how this works.
It's never how it works. Everybody has seen these TV shows where the person walks into a great job and then they get hit with the deal they can't say no to. Because if you say no, they're going to kill you, right? And I'm not saying that's what happened to Rossi, but his own daughter, admitted that he was part of this. She says that she saw him with the others weighing drugs on scales. She walked in on them talking about deals and doing all kinds of stuff. She doesn't think he did any of the drugs, but he definitely was involved in it. Yeah. This all went on to the point where she left her father to go live with other family because she did not like the situation as it was going. So clearly not a great deal. All this comes to a head for Rossi during the Christmas season of 1982. He spends Christmas with his family in Trenton, New Jersey, and they're going to drive him to the airport in Philadelphia on the 29th or 30th. It changes depending on which family member's telling the story, and then, memories are not what they should be all the time. So it's either the 29th or the 30th. He's going to go to the Bahamas to spend the rest of his holiday.
Because
apparently
just anybody can do that too? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and there's nothing that explains why the Bahamas. Nothing explains, he doesn't live there. He's going to vacation, I guess, but, nobody really explains what they thought he was going to go do there.
The Caribbean is still used, and at least was back then too, was used as a corridor for drugs to get him to Miami. It's like a hop from South America to the Caribbean, and then from the Caribbean to Miami. That's probably how it works today. That's probably how it worked then. And I bet it was a business meeting, but I'm no expert.
It definitely has the callings of that. His family tried calling on January 1st to wish him a happy new year to the number they thought he was going to be at. No one answered. All right. Now, this is where, and I've never told like one of these mysteries before. Like, shout out to the Crime Junkies podcast. They always say like full body chills. Like they say that all the time. Like that's their catchphrase. But I'm telling the story, and I'm getting to this part, and I was just like, ooh, and then like it freaked me out a little bit.
It's spooky.
So, yeah, no call on January 1st. On January 3rd, Rossi's mother gets a phone call. On the other end of the line is a woman who identifies herself as Betty. No last name, just this is Betty. And she says that she's Rossi's girlfriend. And she's calling to inform the family that Rossi had died in a plane crash off the coast.
Plane crash off the coast. So like on the way from the airport of Philadelphia to the Bahamas, we're assuming?
She apparently doesn't give that much detail. All she tells them is it's a plane crash off the coast of the Bahamas. Doesn't really give any detail as to like where he was going. He is like a trained and kind of seasoned pilot.
Of course he is. Like he's done everything else.
Who's not? Yeah. So he would have had, a reason to be flying. It wouldn't have been out of the ordinary for him, but he crashed. Now, what would you expect if there was a plane crash? Like, what are some things you would think would happen if a plane crashed?
Well, my first question would have been about the plane crash or about the plane in general that he was on. Was he on a commercial flight with like 100 other people going to the Bahamas, or did he like just walk out onto the tarmac and get into his own plane? Like, what happened there?
Great point, given the fact that he was a pilot. His family watched him enter the airport and exchange a ticket in the terminal. So he did fly to the Bahamas, at least part of the way, commercial. So I guess this would have been after he landed, he's flying around in a personal plane.
Did they ever say where he was supposed to fly straight from Philadelphia to the Bahamas? There was no layover. Like he didn't stop at Miami or Atlanta, swap planes, nothing?
Not supposed to. I think it was like a straightaway flight.
That's weird.
They also never tell them exactly where in the Bahamas this was supposed to have happened. Just off the coast.
So if he was on a commercial flight with potentially plenty of other people, right? Someone else would be able to corroborate this story of, hey, my family member, my friend, my whatever, was on the same plane and also went down off the coast of the Bahamas. There would be more than one account of this plane crash, right?
You would think. But not only is there not more than one account of this plane crash, the FAA, which I don't know all the regulations. The Bahamas is not American soil, so I don't know what jurisdiction the FAA has. But according to the FFA, there is no FAA, not the FFA. That would be a completely different thing. According to the FAA, there is no record of a plane crash at any point during the time that he would have had to have died.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So, again, back to the organized crime syndicate he was a part of. People disappear and are just never heard from again in that world. We're aware of that?
Very.
Like people just disappear, and especially this guy who had this mysterious girlfriend that his mother didn't know about.
Yeah, they don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I said that in the thing. They don't know who this person is. She didn't give a last name. They did not know he had a girlfriend. They don't know who this Betty is. They never heard from her again. They never heard from her before. Just who is Betty?
So she picked up the phone and said, "Hi, is this so-and-so's mom? My name is Betty. I'm so-and-so's girlfriend, and I just wanted to inform you that he died in a plane crash." Click.
Basically, yeah. Like, that's it.
But the story's not that hard to believe, though. Like, having some sort of understanding of organized crime and cartel dealings and like stuff like that, he was murdered.
Absolutely. Like, here's the next part, right? So the FFA doesn't have a plane crash. FAA, I said it again. The FAA doesn't have a plane crash. The family got Prudential to check into the plane itself. They were able to figure out, I guess, what plane, his plane, a plane that he would have had access to while he was there. The plane that crashed, that was supposed to have killed him, between 1983 and 1988 and 1998, when the investigation happens, 15 years, that plane had been bought and sold 3 times since it crashed and killed him.
So there's official transactions, like buying, selling of this individual aircraft with the same number. Like it is the plane that he supposedly got on in the Northeast,
according to Betty.
Betty. So yeah, back to my theory. Like this is an interesting disappearance, and we'll never know what happened to him because nobody in that realm ever talks. But I have a good guess, and my instincts tell me that he was whacked for some reason. And again, we'll never know. But he made somebody mad, and he was taken out. 100%.
I agree with that theory. That's got to be the leading theory, right? There are really three things that everybody says are possible. The first one is that he informed on the drug ring. Like, he's somebody that did not get arrested in this situation. And so that's not a good look. I've never been in an organized crime situation, but I do know that if everybody around you goes to jail and you don't, that's not a position you want to be in.
So that sounds like
can't help but look.
Yeah, that sounds like a scenario where like he became some sort of informant, and he just so happened to not be where everybody else got arrested on that day. Somebody found out. I like that theory. That's a good one.
And even if he wasn't an informant, it sure looks like he's an informant, and that's worse, right? I mean, you might as well be at that point.
Yeah, if you look like one to them, you may as well be one. You're going to get the same end result.
Yeah. The second theory is that it's related because there's this mysterious Betty. People go off branching onto two other theories because the first one makes sense. But if a drug cartel is going to kill you, they're just going to kill you. They're not going to call your family to let you know anything. They're just going to kill you. So this mysterious Betty person leads to the other two theories. Theory 2 is that he informed on the drug ring and as a reward got witness protection from the government. Although, government, like, we know you're listening. Do better. Do better. Like, don't do this, like, because this made the papers, and now everybody knows he's missing, and we got to go look for him.
The reason I don't believe that witness protection story is in the same manner that cartels whack people and they disappear. The government abducts people and they disappear.
Yes, they're not going to be like
the government's not going to like get an administrative assistant named Betty to be like, hey, just wanted to let the mother of the quote-unquote deceased or the disappeared or whatever, I'm not going to let her know what happened. Like, not even going to lie. Like, it's just going to go away and there's going to be no theories because
that's right.
He's dead. But, like, this weird phone call is odd.
That makes that odd, right? Because, yeah, like you said, if you're going in witness protection, you're going. Like, do not pass go. Nobody's going to know what happened to you. You're gone.
You literally take on another life.
The third option fits the Betty narrative probably the best, but doesn't make a lot of sense outside of that. The third option is that everybody around him got arrested. He felt lucky about the situation, that he didn't have to pay that penalty, but also ashamed of that situation, that he got himself involved in it in the first place. And as a result, he went and hung out with his family one last time, and he saw everybody, and he waved goodbye to them, and then he said, I ain't doing this no more, and he ran away. Just ran away. To bring it full circle, our man L.W. Wright just showed up. He was somebody else, just showed up, decided he was going to drive a NASCAR. That's not the right terminology, but he was going to drive in NASCAR, and it was a time period where that was possible. So it's definitely plausible that maybe he just like had a guilty conscience, decided he was going to leave, got somebody to call home to let him know that not to look for him, and then just, lived his life out with Elvis and Marilyn Monroe and Tupac eventually.
Yeah, they're probably all sitting on the same beach right now. That's more plausible than the disappear in witness protection to me. That he just his life was probably being threatened If anybody at any point, like, there's just not a good way out of organized crime, right? So at some point,
I assume.
So at some point, I mean, like, you just watch Netflix shows. If nothing else, you just watch Netflix shows like Narcos. Shout out, best Netflix show ever. And you just watch something like that, and we're kind of getting off the sports rails here, but you just watch something like that, and you either end up dead or in prison. Like that those are your two options. If you're extremely lucky, you end up in witness protection, but most likely you're going to get arrested or you're going to get killed. So those are my two options. Those are my two favorite theories.
Definitely something that's crazy though, and a product of the time, like we said in the intro, man. Like if a famous crew chief goes missing today, that's news. It's going to be on the news for days trying to figure out what happened. But in 1982, it's just like whatever.
Yeah, that
same as a guy
totally
like
different world.
conning his way into a race.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I, again, being raised in a NASCAR family, like going to races, meeting a bunch of drivers at different points, and my family knowing a lot of people. I've never heard either one of those stories, but now I'm interested to go back and I want to ask if anybody that I know knows that story.
Crazy. Well, we hope everybody enjoyed our attempt at spooky season stuff. I know I got a little weirded out there. Just we're going to peel back the curtain here for a second. We're recording this separately, so I've got nobody here with me. Just got freaked out talking about missing persons, if we're being honest. So it definitely got me in the Halloween spirit. Don't know about everybody else.
Definitely but spooky, mysterious. Probably two of the more mysterious stories in NASCAR history, I would assume. Just like people don't just like appear and disappear like that.
No.
So, I'm impressed. Nope. Bravo.
Gracias.
Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, please, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports.